So I'm here at Rose Hill Cemetery in Berrien Springs, which is our big town cemetery. And I'm walking up on a grave that isn't really a grave. And I'll explain to you what I mean here. This is the one I'm talking about. Right there. Got an eagle on top. A couple flags that were put out by the American Legion. And this is the Soldiers Monument. And specifically, this was the Civil War Soldiers Monument, put up in remembrance of those who gave their life in the Civil War. Now, it was erected in 1874. It was procured by private subscriptions. So basically, people just donated to put it up. And if you get closer to it, it's pretty hard to read, unfortunately. If you didn't know what it was, I can see you still not knowing what it was. Just based on trying to read. You can read some of the names. Some of the names I'm going to talk about, you can make them out in memory. So, now this is the front. It's got the shield. On one side, and don't ask me specifically which side, on one side, it has an Abraham Lincoln quote. And that quote is, "They died that the nation might live." And then on another side, it says another quote, "Forget not the dead who fought for us." And then on the other sides are names, the names of those who died. So I didn't know what this was for a long time, and I didn't realize that it was actually a soldier's monument. But the information about it came out of D.W. Ensign's book, published in 1874, The History of Berrien and Van Buren Counties. So one of those big county history books has the information about when it was erected, how it was erected, and what it says on all sides. Which I'm glad they documented it, because there's really, you can make out the names barely. You can't really make out anything on this side. But even in the book, they actually got one of the names wrong, which is kind of crazy. But that name, I'll just walk to it right now. Because it's not very far away. The stone for, give me a second here, gotta flip my cards. The Bartholomew's. I believe it was Frank Bartholomew. Or no, I'm sorry, William Bartholomew. His brother was Frank. And William and Frank both were in the Civil War. Now, William, who is probably that stone there. You can't hardly read these either. But William Bartholomew reached the rank of captain. And he survived the war. He was mustered out in 1866. And he died in 1875 of pneumonia, possibly 1876. There was different records about that. So Frank Bartholomew is the one who died in the Civil War. And the war monument, the soldiers monument, actually has it documented. Instead of F, it says E, which confused me for a long time until I figured out that it was really an F. They just typoed it or whatever. And, you know, things happen. But anyway, Frank died in the Civil War. His brother, William, they both served in Company I of Michigan's 12th Infantry. William died at the age of 36 of pneumonia. So I actually have an article on the Berrien History blog about the Bartholomew family. It's very interesting, and there's a lot more tragic events that happened to their family. If anyone's interested in reading it, just go to berrienhistory.blog and click on the Berrien Springs tab on the bottom of the page, and you'll come up with all of my Berrien Springs stories. So the Bartholomews were one, and I actually have a story about all the Civil War vets too. So I'm using that information for this video. So Frank Bartholomew, who's actually not in Rose Hill Cemetery. This is the grave of William. William's the one who died at 36. Frank enlisted February 19th of 1864. And this is some of the drama, some of the tragedy that happened to the Bartholomews that I was talking about. That's all in that article. But while he was in the war, his son Willie died. He was only 1 year old, Willie. And I think that's probably his stone there. Hard to make out, but I think that's little Willie's grave. A year later, after that, he died. Frank. He died August 4th, 1864, in Little Rock, and that's where he's actually buried. And he died, as often is the case with the Civil War, most people didn't die in battle, most people died of disease, and he died of typhoid malaria fever. So, you know, just as tragic to die in a blaze of glory or to die of a disease that you caught while you're fighting for your country. So that's the Bartholomew brothers' story, a little bit of it, and the little boy as well. Okay, so there's a couple names that I'm looking for, and I honestly don't think I'm going to be able to find them. But that's because the stones are just so old that you can't even read them. Like this one here, I can't make that out at all. There might be records that I could check if I wanted to. But anyway, it is interesting that in front of the Soldiers Monument, there's a row of these ones I can make out. Perkins and, well, I can't make out a name on that. But there is a row of 6 Civil War graves. And there's probably, I mean, if I had to guess, I bet there's probably 2 right in front too as well. 3 maybe. Maybe not. They might have kept that spot open. But anyway, I did want to mention I am looking for a guy by the name of Thomas Streets, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to find him or if he's one of those I can't read, but he is buried here, and he did give his life for the Civil War. He was born in 1838 and he died at age 26, December 31st, 1864. He served in Company I of the 12th Infantry. And the 12th Infantry was organized at Niles, Niles, Dowagiac, and Buchanan, and Berrien boys. They organized from December of 1861 to May of 1862. And overall, they had 428 fatalities 372 of them were from disease. So, just like I was saying before, disease was more likely to kill you than actually getting shot in the war. But that's just the way it was back then. So, I did want to mention, I think I've found everybody but Streets and Joe Kerr and Joel Kerr, he's range 8, so he might actually be, I'm not sure. He's next to his wife, Mary Elizabeth Feather, so I might find a feather graver on here. But just in case I don't, I do want to say that he served actually in the 9th Michigan Infantry in Colonel Company H, and he reached the rank of corporal, and he died of disease in Kentucky in 1861, around 25 or 26 years old. So there's him, and there's also one more that I wanted to say things about, and that was the Dennison boy. Dennison, I believe it was William Dennison, William H. Dennison. He was only 14 years old, which is crazy. Just think about 14 years old. He's in the Civil War. He was actually a drummer boy in Company C of the Michigan Infantry. And he died of disease at Bowling Green, Kentucky on January 16th, 1863. And he is supposed to be buried next to an H.H. Dennison in Range 1, which I walked just a second ago. And there's several graves that I could not read, so I'm thinking that's probably one of them is Mrs. H.H. Dennison. And poor William Dennison's grave is unmarked. So there's that. So that about wraps up the people that I buried here in Rose Hill that I wrote about in my article. And if you want, actually I do have some pictures in there of some graves that I have not been able to locate. I used other people's photos, made by Kathy Gilson. Thank you, Kathy. Because it takes time to like try to find a grave in a big cemetery like this, especially when you can't read a lot of them. So that's the Soldiers Monument. A big part of our history, guys. I mean, I remember reading about Lyman Bernard having drills in the post office to get more soldiers ready for the Civil War. It's crazy, you know. But yeah, there it is. And there's some of the guys that gave their all. So I hope you enjoyed this video. And next time you're out to Rose Hill Cemetery, pay your respects to this big tall guy with the eagle on top, because it honors not just one person, it honors a lot of people. Alright, when you first arrive at Rose Hill Cemetery, drive down Rose Hill Road, and you see this little concrete thing. Don't really know what that was used for. But the very first grave is the grave of Levi Brown, and he was actually in the Revolutionary War. Now, his son is buried somewhere over here and is not marked, but that was Pitt Brown. Now, Pitt Brown was a big founder of our town. He was one of the very first people to start doing anything in Berrien Springs, business-wise. You know, he had the first saloon / post office right where the bridge is at now, by the river. He just did a lot of stuff. He died in the 1840s, and it's really tragic that he's not marked. But Pitt Brown had a son by the name of Levi Pitt Brown. So it would be Levi's grandson. And he's not buried here, but he did die in the Civil War at the age of 26. So I figured I'd tell a little bit about him here. He was the son of Pitt and Hannah Brown, one of the town's founding families, like what I said. And Levi Pitt Brown was born in 1837. He was in Company B of Michigan's 6th Infantry. He mustered out October 20th, 1861, and he died of disease at Port Hudson in Louisiana on October 27th, 1863. So he's not here, he's buried in Louisiana, but his grandfather was in the Revolutionary War. He's buried here. His father's somewhere around here, Pitt Brown. Not a soldier, but he very influential in Berrien Springs history. So I wanted to, before I got too far away from the first part of the cemetery, I wanted to mention Levi Pitt Brown. Alright, here's the grave of Miles Woods. Miles Woods served in the 9th Michigan Infantry, Company H, the same unit as Joel Kerr, who we're going to talk about soon. Miles is interesting because there's not a whole lot of people who are listed on the Civil War monument who actually have stones of their own in this cemetery, and he does, and you can actually read it, so that's nice for a historian's sake. He was only 17 when he died for his country in the Civil War. He was born on April 22nd, 1844, and he died of disease on December 7th, 1861, in West Point, Kentucky. Here's the grave of Joseph Vedder. This is Range 4, Lot 17, Space 2 in Rose Hill Cemetery. He served in the Civil War, in Company I of Michigan's 12th Infantry, the same company as Thomas Streets. He was born in 1843 and he died December 8th of 1861. He was 18 years old. In the 1860 census, Joseph was listed as a farm laborer living with the Whetstone family, which might be why he's buried right next to Abram Whetstone and his family. So we don't know much more about Joseph Vedder, but he didn't have a long time to make memories. Okay, this is probably the biggest stone in this section. Now I'm in the very first range, the old section of Rose Hill Cemetery, and this is the Leader family. And if you notice here, William H. Leader is, let's see it here, there he is. Major Henry Leader. Okay. There's writing all around. Here we go. Dr. Henry Leader, and right below it, William W. Leader, killed in war, 1864. So William W. Leader was the son of Dr. Henry Leader and the grandson of a guy who was in World War 1812, which is, pardon me, Major Henry Leader. who was a soldier in the War of 1812. So he's got soldiers in his family here. Well, his father was a doctor. He wasn't a soldier. But William W. Leader. I'm glad the stone says that, because I actually wasn't able to find out much information at all about William Leader, other than he died 1864. And now he's resting in Rose Hill Cemetery.